It happened so fast that nobody saw it coming. The USS Gerald Ford, one of the most advanced aircraft carriers ever built, was conducting routine operations in the South China Sea when everything went wrong. At 0500 hours, the ship was struck by something. Nobody knows what. Within minutes, the carrier was taking on water so fast that the crew couldn't contain it. Within hours, the ship that cost $13 billion to build, the ship that represents the pinnacle of American naval engineering, the ship that was supposed to be unsinkable, it was at the bottom of the ocean. 2,000 sailors were lost. The entire American fleet in the Pacific was thrown into chaos. And within 12 hours, every intelligence agency in the world was asking the same question. How is this possible? How did the most advanced military vessel in human history go down so quickly? And the answer that emerged was absolutely terrifying. China did this, on purpose, with a weapon that America didn't know existed. A weapon so powerful and so sophisticated that it made every other weapon in the American arsenal look obsolete. And it did it without firing a single shot that anyone saw coming. The fact that this happened changes everything about how America understands its military dominance, and the implications of what comes next could reshape global power for decades. When the initial distress call came in from the USS Gerald Ford, Navy commanders assumed it was a mechanical failure. The ship was huge, over 1,000 feet long, weighing over 100,000 tons. The chance of complete catastrophic failure seemed almost impossible. But then the damage reports started coming in. Every single system on the ship had failed simultaneously. The propulsion systems shut down, the electrical systems went dark, the communication systems went dead, the guidance systems stopped working. Every computer on the ship had crashed at the same time, and then the ship was struck by something that punched a massive hole in the hull. The crew was trained to handle emergencies. They were trained to seal compartments, to transfer weight, to keep ships afloat even after massive damage. But this was different. This was something they had no training for. This was something nobody had trained for, because this was a weapon that shouldn't have been possible. For the first few hours, the Navy thought maybe it was a submarine. Maybe a Chinese submarine had gotten close enough to launch a torpedo. But the damage pattern didn't match any known torpedo. There was no explosion damage. There was something that looked almost like a beam had cut through the ship. The hull had been sliced so cleanly, so precisely, that it looked almost surgical. And the damage wasn't just to the hull. Internal systems were damaged in a way that suggested some kind of energy weapon. Cables were melted. Computer systems were fried. Metal was warped and bent in ways that didn't match conventional weapons. By the time military analysts started looking at satellite footage, by the time they started interviewing survivors, the reality of the situation became clear. China had deployed a directed energy weapon, a laser or microwave weapon so powerful that it could destroy a naval vessel at distance. China had sunk the most powerful warship in the world, and America had no way to defend against it. Let's talk about what a directed energy weapon actually is, because understanding the technology is crucial to understanding why this is such a game-changing moment. A directed energy weapon uses focused beams of energy to damage or destroy targets. These weapons have been in development for decades. America has been working on them. Russia has been working on them. But the weapons that have been tested have always been relatively low power. They've been used for things like missile defense or for blinding satellites. They've never been deployed with enough power to sink a modern warship. But China apparently figured out how to do it. China figured out how to concentrate enough energy, how to focus it precisely enough, and how to deploy it from a distance far enough away that it could completely destroy an American aircraft carrier. What makes this weapon so devastating is that it travels at the speed of light. A missile can be seen coming. A missile can be tracked. A missile can be shot down by air defense systems. But a laser beam travels at the speed of light. There's no warning. There's no time to react. The beam hits the target before anyone even knows they're under attack. And once the beam hits, the damage is instant. The energy concentration is so intense that it vaporizes material. It creates shock waves. It destroys electronics. It starts fires. It's basically like being hit by a focused explosion, except the explosion happens at the speed of light. And by the time the crew of the USS Gerald Ford even realized they were under attack, half the ship was already destroyed. Within 24 hours of the attack, China issued a statement. China said that the destruction of the USS Gerald Ford was a demonstration of China's military capability. China said that this was a message to America that the era of American naval dominance in the Pacific is over. China said that no American warship is safe in Chinese waters anymore. And most ominously, China said that this was just the beginning. China has other weapons. China has weapons that America has never even seen. And China is prepared to use them if America doesn't respect Chinese sovereignty and Chinese interests in the Pacific. The statement sent shockwaves through the American military establishment. The Pentagon immediately began reviewing what it knew about Chinese weapons programs. The Navy started moving its remaining aircraft carriers out of the Pacific. The Air Force started planning contingencies for defending Japan and South Korea without American naval air power. The entire strategic picture in the Pacific changed in a single night. American military planners had to confront a reality that they had been avoiding for years. China has caught up. China has, in some areas, surpassed American military technology. And America is no longer guaranteed to win a military conflict with China. Let's talk about how China developed this weapon, because that story reveals something crucial about how modern military technology develops. China started seriously researching directed energy weapons in the 1990s. Chinese engineers studied American research, Russian research, and conducted their own experiments. For decades, the progress was slow. But around 2010, something changed. China got access to some critical technology. Some analysts think it was through espionage. Some think it was through hacking and intellectual property theft. Some think Chinese engineers simply figured it out themselves. But however it happened, China accelerated its research dramatically. By the 2020s, China was testing directed energy weapons at greater and greater power levels. By 2025, China apparently felt confident enough in its technology to deploy it against an American warship. What's particularly shocking is that American intelligence apparently didn't know this was coming. The Office of Naval Intelligence didn't have reliable information about the development of this weapon. The Defense Intelligence Agency didn't have detailed knowledge of Chinese directed energy weapon capabilities. And the Navy didn't have any defense against this type of weapon when it was deployed. This represents an intelligence failure of major proportions. China kept a massive weapons development program secret. China built weapons of unprecedented power, and America had no idea it was coming. Now, the question everyone is asking is what America is going to do about this. The initial reaction was shock and disbelief, but now the reaction is shifting to strategic assessment and planning. How does America respond to a weapon it can't defend against? How does America regain military superiority when it has been overtaken in a critical area of technology? How does America maintain its position as the dominant military power in the Pacific when China has a weapon that can sink any warship America has? The immediate response from the Pentagon is to accelerate research into directed energy weapon defense. America needs to develop shields that can deflect laser beams. America needs to develop systems that can detect and track incoming laser attacks. America needs to develop point defense systems that can shoot down laser beams or disrupt them. These are all things that American defense contractors are now working on frantically. But developing these systems takes time, and China is not waiting. China is deploying its weapon now. The second part of the American response is to develop its own directed energy weapons that are more powerful and more effective than China's. America has already been working on these systems. The military has tested various laser weapons and microwave weapons. But now the development is being accelerated massively. The Pentagon is pouring resources into directed energy weapon development. Private defense contractors are being brought in. Universities are being asked to contribute their research. Everyone is focused on developing an American directed energy weapon capability that exceeds China's capability. But here's the critical problem. Even if America develops these weapons, there's going to be a period of vulnerability. There's going to be a period where China has a significant advantage. That period could be months, it could be years. During that period, American warships are at risk, American carrier strike groups are at risk, America's entire naval strategy in the Pacific is at risk, and China knows this. China knows that it has opened up a window of opportunity. China knows that for the next period of time, American naval power is compromised, and China is going to take advantage of that window. Let's talk about what this means strategically in the Pacific. For the last 70 years, American naval dominance has been the foundation of American power in the Pacific. American aircraft carriers have been able to operate freely throughout the region. American warships have been able to conduct operations without fear of being attacked by more powerful forces. And this naval dominance has allowed America to guarantee the security of its allies in the region. America has guaranteed Japan's security. America has guaranteed South Korea's security. America has guaranteed Taiwan's security. All of these guarantees have been based on the assumption that American naval power is superior to any potential adversary's naval power. But now that assumption has been shattered. If China can sink an aircraft carrier with a directed energy weapon, then China can sink any American naval vessel. And if China can sink American naval vessels, then China can challenge American naval dominance. And if China can challenge American naval dominance, then America can no longer guarantee the security of its allies in the region. This is a fundamental shift in the balance of power. And the implications are enormous. Japan is immediately rethinking its security strategy. Japan has been relying on American protection. But if American naval power is now vulnerable, then Japan needs to develop its own defense capabilities. Japan is going to accelerate its military buildup. Japan is going to develop its own directed energy weapons. Japan is going to strengthen its air force and its ground forces. Japan is basically going to become a major military power. because Japan can no longer rely on American protection. South Korea is in an even more dire situation. South Korea is directly threatened by North Korea and by China. South Korea has been relying on American military support to deter North Korea. But if American military power is now compromised, then South Korea is much more vulnerable. South Korea is going to have to develop its own nuclear weapons. South Korea is going to have to accelerate its military modernization. South Korea is basically going to have to become a nuclear power because conventional American protection is no longer reliable. And Taiwan is in the most dangerous position of all. Taiwan has been counting on American military support to defend against Chinese invasion. But if America can no longer maintain military superiority over China, then Taiwan's position becomes almost untenable. Taiwan is going to have to contemplate either developing its own nuclear weapons or accepting Chinese political control. The window for Taiwan's independence may be closing very rapidly. The entire security architecture of the Pacific that has been in place since the end of World War II is now in question. All of it was predicated on the assumption that America has military superiority. If that assumption no longer holds, then the entire architecture collapses. And China is waiting to rebuild that architecture according to Chinese interests and Chinese values. Let's talk about how the attack on the USS Gerald Ford actually happened from a technical perspective, because the details reveal the sophistication of China's capability. Chinese satellite imagery had been tracking American naval movements for days. China knew where American carriers were going to be. China positioned a weapons platform in the South China Sea. The exact nature of the platform is still unclear. It could be a ship. It could be a fixed installation on an artificial island. It could even be an airborne platform. But whatever it was equipped with a powerful directed energy weapon. As the USS Gerald Ford approached, the weapon was activated. The laser beam was aimed at the carrier. And the beam cut through the ship's hull, through its armor, through its internal structures with devastating effect. What's particularly terrifying is that this could have been defended against if America had known it was coming. If America had known that China was going to use a directed energy weapon, America could have deployed countermeasures. America could have used electronic warfare systems to try to disrupt the weapon. America could have deployed decoys. America could have maneuvered the ship. But America didn't know what was coming. America had no warning. And by the time the crew realized they were under attack, it was too late. Now let's talk about what this means for the broader global balance of power. This event signals that China is willing to use military force against American assets. China has demonstrated that it has the capability to destroy American military hardware. China has demonstrated that it's willing to take the risk of direct military confrontation with America. This is a massive escalation from the previous state of affairs. For years, China and America had been engaged in military competition without actual military conflict. China had been developing weapons. America had been developing defenses. But nobody had actually fired. Now China has fired. China has used a weapon against an American target. And the message is clear. China is no longer content to just match American military power. China wants to exceed it. China wants to dominate. This realization is sending shockwaves through capitals around the world. Europe is realizing that if China is willing to use military force against America, then Europe is even more vulnerable. Europe has much weaker military capabilities than America. If China can sink an American aircraft carrier, then China can destroy European military assets even more easily. Europe is now scrambling to increase military spending and to develop its own advanced weapon systems. Europe is also rethinking its relationship with China. For years, Europe had tried to maintain relatively good relations with China while also maintaining its alliance with America. But the attack on the USS Gerald Ford has forced Europe to choose sides. Europe is choosing to align with America against China. India is also taking notice. India has significant military interests in the Indian Ocean. India has been developing its own military capabilities to counter Chinese expansion. But now India is realizing that it needs to accelerate its military development because China is demonstrating advanced military capabilities that India doesn't have. India is also reaching out to America and to Europe to form a coalition to counter Chinese power in the region. Russia is watching the situation and understanding something very important. If China can develop and deploy advanced directed energy weapons, then China is becoming a superpower. Russia has always thought of itself as a superpower. Russia has nuclear weapons. Russia has advanced military technology, but Russia's economy is much smaller than China's economy. China's population is much larger than Russia's population. And now China is demonstrating military capabilities that match or exceed Russia's capabilities. This is deeply uncomfortable for Russian leaders. Russia is now contemplating the possibility of a future where China is the dominant military and economic power in the world, and Russia is relegated to a secondary role. The psychological impact of this event on the American people is also significant. For generations, Americans have grown up believing that America is the most powerful military in the world. Americans have believed that America can defeat any enemy. Americans have believed that American technology is superior. But the destruction of the USS Gerald Ford and the death of 2,000 sailors has shattered that belief. Americans are now confronting the reality that America is no longer militarily dominant. America is no longer guaranteed to win military conflicts. America's military advantages have been eroded. This is a shocking realization for Americans who have always taken American military superiority for granted. The question now facing American military planners is whether America can regain its military advantage, or whether America needs to accept a new reality where America and China have roughly equal military power. Some military analysts are arguing that America is already in decline and that trying to restore military superiority is futile. These analysts are arguing that America should accept Chinese military dominance and work to establish a modus vivendi with China. But other military analysts are arguing that America has the economic resources and the technological expertise to regain its advantage. These analysts believe that if America makes the necessary investments and focuses on the right technologies, America can develop advanced weapon systems that exceed China's capabilities. The outcome of this debate is going to determine the future of the world. If America gives up and accepts Chinese dominance, then the world is going to be organized according to Chinese interests. China is going to reshape the international system. China is going to demand that other countries accept Chinese leadership. China is going to suppress freedom and democracy because that's what the Chinese government believes in. But if America fights back, if America accelerates its military development, if America forms a coalition with allies to counter Chinese power, then there's going to be an extended period of military competition and potential conflict between America and China. This competition is going to be expensive. This competition is going to be dangerous. But it might be the price of preserving American freedom and American influence in the world. Let's talk about the technological race that's now underway. China has shown the world what a powerful directed energy weapon can do. Now every military power in the world is trying to develop the same capability. America is working on it. Russia is working on it. Europe is working on it. Even smaller countries are trying to figure out how to develop this technology. Within the next 5 to 10 years, multiple countries are probably going to have working directed energy weapons. And when that happens, the nature of naval warfare is going to change fundamentally. Ships are going to need to be able to defend against laser and microwave attacks. Ships are going to need armor that can withstand energy weapons. Ships are going to need electronic systems that can continue to function even if they're hit by electromagnetic pulses from energy weapons. The entire design of naval vessels is going to have to change. The other dimension of this arms race is the development of offensive directed energy weapons that are more powerful and more accurate than China's weapon. America is trying to develop a laser system that can shoot down enemy aircraft. America is trying to develop microwave systems that can disable enemy electronics. America is trying to develop weapons that can target enemy satellites. All of this technology is developing rapidly, but it's also becoming increasingly destabilizing. When both sides have weapons that can instantly destroy targets at the speed of light, the risk of accidental escalation increases dramatically. There's less time for diplomacy. There's less time for de-escalation. There's more risk that a single incident could spiral into a major military conflict. The human cost of this technological revolution is also significant. 2,000 sailors died on the USS Gerald Ford. Those were American men and women who were serving their country. They had families. They had dreams. They had lives ahead of them. And all of that was cut short in an instant by a directed energy weapon they didn't even know was being used against them. And this is just the beginning. If military conflict breaks out between America and China, if naval warfare becomes a reality in the Pacific, then there are going to be many more casualties. There are going to be many more families grieving the loss of loved ones. There are going to be many more sailors, pilots, and soldiers dying in a conflict that might have been prevented if the situation had been handled differently. This brings us to the most critical question facing the world right now. Can America and China find a way to coexist without military conflict? Can the two powers establish some kind of agreement about what each can and cannot do? Can they establish spheres of influence where each respects the other's interests? Or is military conflict inevitable? Is this just the opening move in a conflict that's going to define the next century? The answer to these questions is going to determine the future of the world. And right now, the answer is uncertain. What we know for certain is that the destruction of the USS Gerald Ford has changed everything. It has demonstrated Chinese military capability. It has demonstrated Chinese willingness to use military force. It has demonstrated that America is no longer militarily dominant. And it has set off a technological arms race that's going to shape military development for decades to come. The world is entering a new era. It's an era of great power competition between America and China. It's an era where military technology is advancing faster than ever. It's an era where the risk of military conflict is higher than it's been since the Cold War. And it's an era where the outcome is completely uncertain. For the American military, the destruction of the USS Gerald Ford is a wake-up call. The military is now focused on developing defensive systems against directed energy weapons. The military is accelerating research into offensive directed energy weapons. The military is redesigning its naval strategy to account for the vulnerability of traditional surface ships. The military is also thinking about whether the era of the aircraft carrier is coming to an end. If surface ships can be sunk so easily by directed energy weapons, then maybe the future of naval warfare is with submarines, with undersea drones, with aircraft that operate at extreme ranges. The entire naval strategy is being rethought. The American people are also grappling with the implications of this event. Americans are realizing that American military dominance is not guaranteed. Americans are realizing that China is a serious threat. Americans are realizing that the future is uncertain. This has led to increased interest in military affairs and national defense and understanding the geopolitical situation. Americans are also having debates about whether America should continue to focus on maintaining military dominance in the Pacific, or whether America should focus on addressing domestic problems. Should America spend trillions of dollars on military modernization to counter China, or should America spend that money on infrastructure, healthcare, education? These are difficult questions with no easy answers. The destruction of the USS Gerald Ford is a moment of historical significance. It's a moment when the world's military balance shifted. It's a moment when one era ended and a new era began. The era of unchallenged American military dominance is over. The era of American-Chinese military competition has begun. And the outcome of this competition is going to shape the world for generations to come. Every decision that America makes now, every investment that America makes, every strategy that America pursues is going to influence whether America can regain military dominance or whether America will have to accept a world where China is the dominant power. The stakes are enormous. The uncertainties are profound. And the world is watching to see how America responds. If you've been following this situation and you want to understand the real implications of what happened to the USS Gerald Ford, if you want to understand how this changes the military balance in the Pacific, if you want to understand what this means for American military strategy, then please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're covering this situation in real time, and we're going to keep bringing you the latest analysis as the situation develops. The destruction of the USS Gerald Ford is just the beginning of a much larger story about the future of American power in the world. And understanding that story is crucial for understanding the future of the world itself. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think. Do you think America can regain military superiority over China? What do you think America's response should be? Do you think military conflict between America and China is inevitable? What do you think the world should look like in 20 years if this conflict is resolved? Your perspectives matter. Your comments help us understand how people are thinking about these massive geopolitical questions. And the discussion in the comments helps all of us think more clearly about what's at stake. Share this video with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Help us spread the word about what's really happening in the Pacific and why it matters for all of us. The more people who understand the military situation, the more people who understand the implications of directed energy weapons, the more informed the global debate about America's future can be. Help us reach more people so that everyone can understand what's at stake. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video as we continue to follow this critical story about the future of American power in the world.